The base layer, you can say, of everything is isness. The base of notness is also isness. There is the isness of notness. There is the yesness of the experience of notness or the idea of notness. And so the context of everything is actually isness. The notness is the mask. And underneath the mask is the same isness. I've always mentioned that everything can be used, right? Anything can be used as a springboard to get in touch with reality, to get in touch with the quote unquote, with the preference, with isness, yesness, basically. And at the same time, anything can be used as an excuse to be, quote unquote, to be in touch with the negative. Right? We can say, oh, it's because of this that I feel this way. It's because of this circumstance or situation that there is a sense of, whatever negative feeling or emotion. And so what's happening at that time is that we have used the circumstance or situation to get in touch with the negative. But that's the thing. The opposite is also true. We can also use that same situation or circumstance to be in touch with the positive. There's no inherent linkage. It's up to us how we use whatever, how we use appearances or circumstance or whatever. We humans have that tendency. We humans have that tendency to make things as some kind of permission slip, to be in touch with the negative or be in touch with the positive. We're always in usage, basically. we're always saying, this is whatever the case, therefore, right? Therefore, I feel this way. Therefore, I am in touch with this. Therefore, blah, 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 right? And this tendency, since this is the tendency of us humans, we can then therefore use it to our advantage. We can use whatever as a permission slip to get in touch with our preference, to isness, to yesness. And it almost doesn't even matter what it is. It's how it's used. That's what, quote unquote, gives the effect. In our world, anything can be used as a positive or negative. Like, for example, money. Money can be used for positive or negative, or even, let's say, quote unquote, a horrible experience. A person can use that quote unquote horrible experience as a lesson or as a springboard, right, to recognize empowerment. And another person can use that same experience to lash out, to be a victimized perpetrator, right? It's the same experience, right? But it is used very differently. And so that's how our world is. It's usable in both ways. Anything can be used in either positive or negative. We're always creating linkage. You can say there is the tendency to project permission slip for us to, again, to get in touch with something. We decide on the usage of something. Like we decide if this particular thing or situation or appearance or whatever is the one that enables us to whatever. It's the one that gets us in touch with something. Or we can decide that this particular thing, appearance, situation, experience is the one that disables us, is the one that disconnects or separates us from whatever. You see, it's all according to our decision. But the particular appearance or circumstance is actually a neutral prop. how it is used, or our decision on its usage, you can say, is the one that dictates our experience. We're always using it as a permission slip. And it's according to our decision if we use it as a permission slip to access or disallow ourselves from something, or withhold access to something from ourselves, right? But it's not the thing itself, it's not the appearance itself or situation itself, it's our decision on its meaning, on its usage. And you can say that the core idea here is when we use something to recognize the positive, we are recognizing the true nature, right? We are recognizing its reality. All true nature qualities lie in existence, right? So we are using something to recognize its base, which is basically existence, right? The base of all things is existence, where true nature qualities lie, right? In existence. When we use something to quote unquote get in touch with the negative, then we are using it as a springboard away from its base, away from reality. We're using it to recognize quote unquote false nature, right? And so it's like a point of reference. For example, a slice of pie. So that's the referential point. Right now, we can use the slice of pie to recognize its separatedness, to recognize its fragmentedness, to quote unquote be in touch with non completeness, non wholeness, the notness side, basically. Or we can use that slice of pie to recognize its context. Now, the context of the slice of pie is, of course, the whole pie. Like, imagine the slice of pie, and it's situated within the context of the whole pie, meaning it never left the whole pie. It's just that there's the slice, right? So the slice of pie orientation is accessible, but it remains to be within the base or the context of the whole pie. And so that same slice of pie can be used to recognize the context, to recognize the reality or the true nature qualities, you can say. It's the same pie. You can use that same pie to recognize the fragmentedness, the separatedness, the notness stuff, or it can be used to recognize the opposite, which is basically recognizing its reality, its context, its base existence, because again, all true nature qualities lie in existence. So the fact of its existence indicates that it is here. Whatever true nature quality that the ego is seeking is actually right here, is present. It lies in existence, right? It doesn't lie in non existence, in notness. And since the situation is here, whatever permission slip or whatever object or appearance is here, there is the existence of that appearance, situation, circumstance. Well, then, therefore, that quote unquote positive quality is here. The existence of that element indicates that that true nature quality is actually here, you know. Like, for example, the presence or the existence or the experience of, again, let's say a horrible situation or a horrible experience, the fact that that experience or situation exists indicates that there is infinite worth, infinite validity, infinite deservability. That's why it's there. That's why it exists, because it's unconditionally loved by existence. Therefore, it was allowed. It is unconditionally allowed, right? There's infinite worth in there. Or let's say something that you typically use as a way to feel less than or unworthy. But that's the thing, the fact of its existence means that it has infinite worth. It has infinite validity. That's why it exists. So when we use that something to get in touch with the negative, well, then we're using its untrue nature. We're using its false nature. You can say that we are missing its point. Its point is that it exists, right? And so it contains all the true nature qualities. But when we use it to feel unworthy, invalid, incomplete, not whole, not there yet, not whatever, well, then you can say we have shunned its true nature, right? We have left out the context, its base core reality, you can say. It's like using the slice of pie to cover up everything else, to cover the context, to cover the rest of the pie. We have taken it out of the context. And when something is taken out of context, then it's already untrue, right? It's already unreality. It's already distorted. And so then the experience that we get is notness, which is the distortion of isness. That's why it's helpful to remember the essence, remember the base essence of everything, which is existence. It is in existence where all goodness lies. You can say that existence is the currency to quote unquote afford true nature qualities. And that's the thing, existence is that which always exists, that which unconditionally is here, ever present. We are rich in existence. We can never, quote unquote, run out of existence. We can never go outside of existence. We can never not exist. And so we can actually use the fact of existence as a quote unquote permission slip to get in touch with the preference, the stream of preference or whatever preferred true nature quality. So you can say that we're always in usage. It's just that we either use something to buy into the notness or recognize reality. And that's the thing, we can always choose the latter. We can always decide to use something as a springboard or permission slip to recognize accessibility or non separation, or allowing, meaning we allow ourselves to quote unquote partake of that particular true nature quality instead of using something for its inverse, like the inverse purpose, you can say. Meaning, again, we are shunning its existence and therefore we derive notness from it. We are using it in a twisted way instead of springboard for accessibility and enabling, right? We use it as a permission slip for disabling, non-accessibility, disallowing, withholding ourselves from something. right? Which is again is the disrecognition of the context, which is a blinding of self from the context, which is the fact of existence.